All right, here we go. Salute to NBA Nation on this Wednesday night. Back at it for another edition of the NBA Report. CP the franchise, Alex Shataro's here. On today's show, Dame Watch continues, man. We're going to talk Dame Lillard trade updates with our special guest, Danny Morang of the Jacked Ramses podcast. Plus, some NBA rule changes, man. We're going to dish on that. Zion Williamson's interview on the Gilbert Arenas podcast. We'll touch on some of those sound bites. And Kyrie Goes To China. Good news for some of you fans, but we'll react to Kyrie's new sneaker deal with Anta as well, man. So lock in, hit that thumbs up button for you boys, and let's get into it, man. Another edition of the NBA Report, man. Back at it from Las Vegas, man. Al, how you feeling? You were Mr. Vegas, man, a couple days ago, man. Have you recovered from your fun in Sin City, man?
Man, I yesterday I was just completely out of the loop. Slept in way too long. Jet lag, the Vegas illness, for those of you who've never been out to Vegas, the heat can really get to you. So you come back and you feel dry, dehydrated, exhausted, having crazy dreams. It just feels like you're on a whole other level. But I feel good, man. Feel good.
Yeah.
But you didn't tell the people that I invited you to some of these events, man. You just said, nah, I'm good, man.
Listen, man. I know you did. You did. Look, the lady wanted to go out. I don't want to take the lady out on a nice date. I had the Ferragamos on, man. The places you seemed like you were going to, I had to either be VIP or I just wasn't going to do it, bro. You know what I'm saying? I can't get the Ferragamo stepped on at the house music party. You know what I mean?
That's not what you told me. You said, look, man, I'm the geezer. You're the whippersnapper. I'm too old for this.
No,
Me and the missus are going to be home.
Yeah.
We're going to watch some Jeopardy. We're going to watch some SNL, and I'm going to enjoy my favorite dessert.
It wasn't Jeopardy. It was
tapioca pudding.
Yeah, I think your version was along those lines, man. But I want to welcome our guest, man. He is, like I said, the host of the Jacked Ramses podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network and the host of 1080 The Fan, the Danny and Dusty show. He is Danny Morang. Danny, how you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you. And look, as also a member of the Washed clan, I brought my wife to Vegas last year.
Okay.
She had never been before, so that was my excuse last year.
Yeah.
It's like, hey guys, I'm too old for this. I'm too broken for this. I was fresh off a hip surgery. I brought my wife. I was like, man, I can't get down like this anymore. So look, I get it. But look, I went down by myself this year. Little more wild, but still nothing too crazy. There's a few nights that came close to maybe a hangover type situation happening. I'm going to wake up at Mike Tyson's the next morning, but I was able to dial it back ever so slightly.
Well, you know what, man? It's just speaks to the fun that Summer League could be, man. This was my third one that I attended this previous year, and just got back a couple days ago. For you, man, what's been the experience for you? We'll get to the prospects in a little bit, but overall, just talk about what the Summer League experience has been for you.
Yeah, so I've been to 10 Summer Leagues now. I have it down to a pretty tight science. I do about 4 days. My very first Summer League was Damian Lillard's rookie year. I did the entire 2 weeks, and I wanted to kill myself by the end of that.
Yeah.
It was a crazy experience. I had like an Airbnb situation with a bunch of other young NBA talent at media talent at that point in time, and now they're kind of like the who's who across the world in NBA media. So it's kind of cool to watch the ascension, basically over the last decade of people. But 2 weeks is too much, man. Ben Gall over the Washington Post, he does 2 weeks every year, and then he stays for Team USA minicamp, which is 2 days after Summer League. I go to high school. BG, he's my guy. I tell him every year, I don't know how you do this. Like you're an absolute machine, monster, degenerate, whatever it is. But like 4 days in Vegas, I feel like that's a sweet spot. You catch some games, you meet some people, reconnect with some people, you can go out for a night or two. Just chill. But this year was pretty nuts, man.
Yeah.
The craziest Summer League I've seen is the Lonzo Ball draft was 2017. LA just moved from Los Angeles to Vegas, just took it over, and that was absolutely bonkers. The Blazers this season played before the Spurs, and the head of NBA media was coming around to all of the media spots, making sure that we were going to leave our seats so that National and Spurs media would have front row seats for the first game for Wemby.
Wow.
So I thought, I was like, hey, look, I scoped up my seat ahead of time. I was going to be able to watch Wemby up close. Got to go. So a little disappointed.
Man.
I got moved up to the auxiliary seating for Wemby. I took in a few minutes of that towards the end of the game. I watched most of it from underneath the arena because I was doing media under there. The energy was palpable to tip off that game, but man, did it fizzle out quick.
Yeah, it did. It did.
It didn't really rebound until Wemby's second game, which was against Portland.
Yeah.
And then you kind of felt it come back. But all in all, great experience in Vegas. It's become this huge event, right? It's not, a decade ago, it was a gem in the desert. You could go in there and, my very first summer league, I sat with Kiki Vandeweghe and talked basketball with him for 2 hours. Like it was nothing. It was crazy. I was like, I'm sitting here with Kiki, like he's just educating me on this, that, and the other, front office, stories from when he was playing. That kind of thing is kind of hard to come across now because it's such a big deal. Like not only the Thomas and Mack Center where the main games are at, but the Cox Pavilion was packed to the gills. And back in the day, there's 40, 50, 100 people in there for the biggest game. Like, so you could co-mingle with executives and scouts and analysts and ask questions and build relationships. Now it's this whole big event that it's a little less personal, but still a crazy good time.
Yeah, it's becoming like almost like a national convention, man. And I like the way that the NBA is rolling it out. You have the NBA Con now, obviously the in-season tournament. So Vegas is kind of becoming that next hub as they gear up for that Vegas franchise, man. So, great showing by the league once again. And I agree with you. I felt like the hype around Wemby, it hit its peak once tip-off came, right? Each game before that, the fans were getting restless, like, get this over with, let's get to Wemby. And then once the game started, I went to the Zion game, the earthquake game. It didn't have that same energy once tip-off came. But you're right, the Sunday game I was at against the Blazers, obviously when he went off, he played a lot better. The energy was definitely there. Everybody was, at the edge of their seat, hoping that he would score. But, speaking of the Blazers, and we'll get to some league team in a little bit. You have Dame Lillard. As you said, you covered him from his rookie year, and now looks like the sun is setting on his Blazers career. Before we get into that trade details, man, I mean, just, from covering him from then to now, just how do you feel about this thing really just coming to an end?
Sucks. To be blunt, it sucks. That's the thing about this is like when we're media, we're supposed to have these, separate relationships and stuff like that. You can't cover somebody for this long and not become attached to them. There's a mutual friendship there. Like we text back and forth. It's not, it's not always basketball. It's life too. And that's you're around somebody for that long and spend that many hours and that many days and that many games around each other. Like, that part of it sucks. Like on a personal level, it's like, for me, it's very hard to cover this because of relationships that I have on both sides, both with Damian Lillard and with people in the front office. It's one of those things where it's like, it's not that I'm, I want something more I want everybody to be happy in this situation. And I think there's this thing out there that things have become really contentious between the Blazers and Damian Lillard. And based on reporting, I think people have a reason to believe that. But from talking to both sides, it's not nearly as bad between them as it's made out to be. And I think that's the part of this that sucks, is having kind of have a front row seat for all of this. Is I'm one of the few people that still talks to both sides, and so that part of it on a personal level sucks. It sucks for Portland because this is now the latest star that's going to leave Portland unceremoniously. There hasn't been a star in this franchise's history that hasn't left on bad terms.
Yeah,
you've got Bill Walton with the injuries. You've got Clyde Drexler demanding to go home to Houston. You've got LaMarcus Aldridge leaving in free agency. And now you've got Damian Lillard demanding a trade. The four faces of your franchise are leaving under bad terms. And I don't think that's something that's natural to Portland because they're this horribly run franchise. They're one of the winningest franchises in all of NBA. They're a team that historically, except in the last couple of years, has been great. They have a 22 season run of being in the playoffs. They've got 4 finals appearances, including a title. Like, you compare that to almost any other franchise in the NBA, it's better. Like, there's only 5-6 franchises who have a better, history than the Blazers. And I think most people don't realize that until you start digging into it and you go, oh, they're never really bad, with the exception of the Jailblazers era where they were really bad.
Yeah.
But this whole framing of how things have ended with stars, it sucks. And there's this feeling in Portland like he leaves, Portland gets whatever back. Does that cycle start anew with Scoot Henderson? And so like there's the wheels start turning of like, oh God, is he only going to be here for 9 years? Or is he going to be a guy who's as loyal to Portland as Dame was? And like, I know that gets overblown nationally. I know Dame on a personal level. That was never something that was a joke. Like he's building a castle in the Portland suburbs. When he's done with basketball, he will live here. His whole family is here. He got married here. He started his family here. He's moved everybody here. This whole idea of like Dame being ingrained with Portland is special. Part of the reason he's looked at as being the greatest trailblazer of all time over Clyde Drexler is because of his involvement with the community. Is that nobody's ever come close to that. And so all of that stuff together, him asking out, it hurts. And you can feel it everywhere in Portland.
What changed in your perspective? What changed? Because over the last couple of years, it's been, I'm here, I'm in the soil, I'm in the mud, I want to get it out the mud with my team. What's the point of going to a front runner, a championship contender, and now it's Miami or bust? What changed in your opinion?
I think mortality. I think he got older. He's lost a lot of people around him in the last 3 years. I believe the number is 8. 8 people around him have passed to various things, health-related, violence-related. And I think a lot of that has disturbed him to a point of like taking stock of his life and knowing that time is fleeting. I think that's a big part of this. And the other thing about this is if Portland was able to land a single player of consequence, he would stay. He's not looking for, I know everyone's like, well, he just wants to go to Miami. I think he's saying if I'm going to leave the place that I don't want to leave, I'm going to go to the one place I want to go to. And I think people can't really reconcile those two things squarely because they don't know him. Because I will tell you flat out, Damian Lillard does not want to leave Portland. I have that on the best authority possible. He does not want to leave, but he feels like the organization is not in a place where he feels like their leading responsibility right now is winning. I think he looks at things and not even angrily. I think he looks at it rationally and goes, they're looking to develop because that's the best thing for them right now. And the best thing for me is not that. Like if you listen to his comments during the exit interviews about him not wanting to play with 19-year-olds, that's the soundbite everybody plays. The one that you need to play is that path is not my path when he's talking about development versus winning. Because that's the important thing. Because if they made a deal, let's say they traded, Anthony Simons, the number 23 pick of this draft for OG Anunoby, we're not having this conversation. Damian Lillard's in Portland and happily in Portland. Because now you've got Dame, Shaedon, or Dame, Matisse, OG, Jeremy Grant, Yusuf Nurkic. Is it the best team in the league? No. Is it a team that can make some noise in the playoffs? Yeah. It's about and the thing about Dame is you have to remember, Damian Lillard legitimately believed he could win an NBA title with Maurice Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu as his starting forwards. That's not him like blowing smoke. That's how he's wired. Like that's he believes that whoever he's in a foxhole with, he can win with. So if you give him even remotely tangible dudes, he'll believe it 100%. And so the change was the Blazers went young. And any NBA player who's been in the league a decade will tell you young players can't win. It's not a shot at guys. Yeah. There's 3 young players in NBA history, modern NBA history. Magic Johnson, LeBron James, Tim Duncan. Those are the 3 guys who were legitimately impactful winners day one in the NBA. That's the list. And as good as Scoot Henderson is probably going to be, as good as Shaedon Sharpe is going to be, it is going to be 4 or 5 years before they are impactfully winning basketball games. That's just how this stuff goes.
Danny, I got to ask, what do you think is the reason why it was tough to build a contender for Dame in Portland?
It's really simple. Neil O'Shea refused to. Zach Lowe actually outlined an article today on ESPN. I would say he was basically, I wouldn't say stealing from me, but it was my manifesto, so to speak, as it pertains to what went wrong with the Portland Trailblazers. LaMarcus Aldridge left in free agency in 2015. And from that point on, they looked to kind of reset things. And they thought they were going to be really bad. It turned out Damian Lillard was good enough for basically 41 wins. That's how good he is. The problem is in that time period after drafting Damian Lillard, Neil O'Shea drafted CJ McCollum. And even though Neil technically drafted Damian Lillard, all of the work was done before he got there. Neil O'Shea got the job 3 weeks before the draft. Chad Buchanan was the interim GM in the time being. And they had all but said that Damian Lillard was their guy. And when Neil O'Shea got the job, he was under orders to draft Damian Lillard. So while it goes on his record, not really the guy he drafted, right? But CJ McCollum, he did all the work on. There have been notes behind the scenes that Neil O'Shea thought CJ McCollum was better than Damian Lillard and refused to trade him. He thought that there was times, I think, where he would have been more apt to trade Damian Lillard than CJ McCollum. There are multiple times that Paul George and Jimmy Butler were available to Portland, and the inability to and James Harden, the inability to include CJ McCollum was prohibitive in those deals. The 2017 draft, when Paul George was available from the Pacers, the Blazers could have gotten Paul George, and Paul George, I know, was amenable to the fact of coming to Portland to play with Damian Lillard. The Blazers were not willing to entertain CJ McCollum in that package. And that kept being kind of the dividing line through and through and through about whether or not the Blazers could move on. And then the other moves on the edges were always incremental. So, a trade for Robin Lopez here that was, that became a 2015 team that was very good was like, hey, that's good, but now what? The trading Mason Plumlee for a first-round pick and a disgruntled Yusuf Nurkic. People tend to kind of reanalyze that deal now with hindsight. The Blazers traded Mason Plumlee for the first-round pick, but the price they had to pay was taking Yusuf Nurkic out of Denver, who was incredibly unhappy. So they got a starting center out of the deal, but they kind of lucked into getting that because they were trying to reshuffle the deck a little bit. Then they give up 2 first-round picks for Robert Covington. They blow the 2017 draft. And that, to me, the 2017 draft was the nail in the coffin. And I think, honestly, that was the writing on the wall. Moving up to draft Zach Collins, passing on OG Anunoby, passing on Donovan Mitchell, passing on Jared Allen. I mean, you can do revisionist draft stuff for a lot of people. The 2017 draft buried the Blazers. Absolutely buried them because they got nothing out of it. Unfortunately, Caleb Swanigan, who they took before Josh Hart and Kyle Kuzma, has since passed. He battled some demons with his weight and growing up homeless and around drugs. And, unfortunately, society got him in that vein. But even on the basketball side of things, they missed the pick, which I know it's gross to kind of talk about that and posthumously, but that's the reality of the situation. Zach Collins, who is kind of putting his career together in San Antonio, Neil O'Shea billed him, and I'm not kidding, this is his words, a combination of LaMarcus Aldridge, Rasheed Wallace, and Kevin McHale. That was how he billed him. Okay? A guy who had 0 post work was compared to 3 of the best post players in the modern basketball era. Kevin McHale might have the second best post work in NBA history behind Hakeem Olajuwon. And this is a guy who had no back to the basket game. He projected him as a floor stretcher. I believe he hit 12 threes at Gonzaga as a backup.
Crazy.
So you look at all of these forks in the road, they all went wrong. All of them went wrong for Portland because they had a GM that was more about protecting his neck than taking any risk, who every single time when an opportunity to go big came open, he refused to take it. And it just kept kicking the can down the road. And from 2016 on, that's what it was. The infamous line from Neil O'Shea following their unceremonious exit in the first round in 2021 against the Nuggets, the short-handed Denver Nuggets. Neil O'Shea said the loss of that series, I quote, was not a product of the roster. He essentially blamed all of it on Terry Stotts.
Wow.
Which is absolutely an insane thing to do. No, even if it was true, to throw a coach under a bus like that after all the mistakes that you've made was, I mean, that was the beginning of the end for Neil O'Shea. Obviously, they started to run it back the next year. He was fired in December of that season, and that's kind of how we got to where we are now, is that the Blazers essentially kickstarted a rebuild then.
And now that you're turning this chapter after what has been a crazy run under, I guess, like a crazy experience, I'll say, not a crazy run, with Damian Lillard as like the face of the franchise and being this marquee talent, you know, now he has to go to Miami, right? That's where he wants to end up, because he believes that's where he's going to have the best opportunity to win a championship. And I need to know what the fan like heat check is on this feeling. Would you rather see the Blazers get the best possible return for Damian Lillard, or as a fan base, after what Dame has done for the franchise, would you just be happy with him going to Miami and taking whatever Miami has in return?
Portland loves Damian Lillard, and he will always be number one in their hearts. But Portland fans what's best for Portland. So if there's a world where Dame ends up in Miami and Portland gets a return significantly better than what is out there for Miami, that's fine. If Miami's able to put together a 5, 6, 7 team deal where Portland ends up with what they want and Dame ends up at Miami, that's fine. But this whole like 1, 2, 3 team deal where Portland gets this poo-poo platter from Miami and maybe another pick, no, I don't. The vast majority of Portland fans are not okay with that, because they know what it is to be in this market. Nobody wants to come here on their own. You have to draft them or trade for them. And if you're not able to get the necessary capital out of Damian Lillard, it's going to be a very, very difficult point to keep going from this, even with young guys like Shaedon Sharpe, Anthony Simons, and Scoot Henderson, because they have a lot of the roster still to fill out. And they don't have additional assets beyond this. They aren't the Thunder or the Jazz or a team or the Pelicans, where they have this buffet of picks to kind of build from to fill out the rest of the roster, where, you know, when the time is right, they can strike. They basically had to rebuild their asset closet following Neil O'Shea's termination, because he gave away so much of what they needed to do so, to add guys like Larry Nance Jr., to add Robert Covington, to add Norman Powell in a swap. Like, those kind of things have kind of drained them of all their necessary capital. So Portland can't just take, you know, a pick in 2028 and a pick in 2030 and maybe rotation level players in Jaime Jaquez and Nikola Jovic, which, like, I don't like the crap on these kids. I really don't. But you're talking about Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard Sr., one of the top 75 players, best players of all time. There's like, well, he's older in his contract. I'm like, he just dropped 32 and 7 on 47, 40, 92. What do you want? Like, he's not slowing down. I know the guy. He's a machine. There was like, oh, he's injury prone. I'm like, he played through an ab injury for 4 years, where he basically played 82 games and 36 a night. He's indestructible. The only games he's missed in the last 2 years is the first injury he ever had was having that surgery and then being shut down by the team. The guy is about as reliable and destructive an offensive player that is like, if you're looking at offensive players in the last 10 years, it's Kevin Durant, Nikola Jokic, and Harden and him. Like, those are the 4 guys where you roll the ball out. Like, and it doesn't matter where you are as a hooper or analytics guy. I was looking at the numbers today. Somebody called Dame a chucker. They're like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was so much more efficient. Dame averaged 1.12 points per possession. That's an insane offense unto himself. 1.12 points per possession by himself is otherworldly. His points per shot was 1.52. If you're doing that, you are quite literally a top 5 offense unto yourself. The current guys in the NBA that do that, Dame, Luka, KD, Giannis isn't even that. Jokic, like that's the list. That's how good he is offensively. People are like, oh, he's a bad defender. I'm not going to go to bat for Dame's defense because it's not great, but there hasn't been a playoff series that he's ever played in where he's been hunted. Trae Young, he gets hunted. Like that kind of thing happens. I've never seen Dame get hunted. So this whole idea of like Dame being overpaid or falling off a cliff, worry about that when he's 37. That's still 4 years away. Until then, he's that dude.
Once again, we're talking to Danny Morang, the host of the Danny and Dusty Show on 1080 The Fan out in Portland, and also host of the Jacked Ramses podcast and the Blue Wire Podcast Network. So to everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Danny, you talked about Neil O'Shea and the job that he did really tying up the knots of the organization. Now, Joe Cronin is faced with the impossible task of trading Mr. Portland and getting a return that can put the Blazers on a path to building properly for their future. But you mentioned the Miami package and the lack of quality in there. So herein lies the problem, because Dame has said it's Miami or bust. And Joe Cronin saying in order for both sides to get what they want, there needs to be more than one team involved here, either as an option. So, how does Portland get their value? Is there another team that Dame may have on his list? Maybe it's a Brooklyn, or is Portland going to try to seek maybe a multi-team trade to ultimately get what they want?
I think it's one of two things has to happen. It has to be like a 4, 5, 6 team deal where it's going to get nuts, where you get, Harrow goes to San Antonio and Keldon Johnson goes to Cleveland and Cleveland sends Jared Allen to Portland and Portland sends Nurkic. Something like it's going to get weird. Like it's either that or Dame adds 2 more teams to the list. You throw Boston on the list, you throw New Orleans on the list. And I know everybody in Boston's like, they're not including Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown's not going to Portland. To be honest, I don't want Jaylen Brown in Portland. I want Jaylen Brown in Houston. Send Jaylen Brown to Houston. Send Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and 2 1s to Portland. Call it good. Like those are the kind of things that I'm looking at if I'm Portland. If you can get Dame to say, look, man, I know you don't want to go to Boston. You don't want to live there, whatever the situation is. You're tight with Jason Tatum. You're tight with JT. Go there and go win a title. Go to New Orleans. They'll redirect CJ McCollum somewhere else. It'll be Dame, B.I., Zion, Herb, and Trey Murphy. Go ball out. Have fun there. Like, I think there are other landing spots for him that make sense on the basketball side of things, even if they don't necessarily make sense for him living-wise. Mm-hmm. And I honestly don't think it's the basketball side of things that's hanging things up. I think in Dame's head, he's like, I'm in the place that I want to be in Portland. So if I'm going to leave this place, I'm going to go to the only other place I'd rather live. And I think that's what kind of makes this whole thing work for him as far as that part of it. And he's mentioned in the past that he's, if he wasn't playing in Portland, he'd like to play in LA or Utah. I don't think the Clippers have enough, but if the Clippers got involved and Paul George, ended up in New York, he's a CAA guy. And New York sends part of their stuff, anything not named RJ Barrett, to Portland. No, just so you know, I'm not an RJ guy. not coming here, guys. Nope. I don't want Kentucky guys. I don't want Tyler. I don't want RJ. I don't want Kentucky Duke guys. I don't want either one of them.
Yeah,
that's good. But like if they can find something there, okay. But that's the thing is, what's going to be funny is when this does ultimately go down, it's going to be one of 2 paths. There's other teams involved, or it's this super trade where Portland, LA, Philadelphia, Miami, Brooklyn, Boston, like it's a 6-7 team, Utah, teams that have all OKC will get involved because they have 1,000 picks and they can't use them all. And you're just going to get pieces moving everywhere. And that's the part of this is both of those things, either adding more teams to the list or some mega deal, take time. And they're going to take a ton of time to get either of these done.
Well, what do you make of, when I touched down in some league, I kind of set my Twitter network ablaze because when the announcement came out from his agent, from Aaron Goodwin, that said, it's Miami or bust, and he's threatening to sit out, you had so many fans in an uproar. He's selfish. He's this, he's that. He needs to honor his contract and this, that, and the third. And I said, well, look, He gave this organization 11 years of blood, sweat, and tears. 7 all-star appearances. I mean, what more did you want the guy to do? He literally put the franchise on his back. This is a players' league. The teams typically will work with the player to get him where he needs to go. Kevin Durant got to go to where he wanted to go eventually with the Phoenix Suns, even though the Nets got a great deal. I'm not saying that Portland should be accepting pennies here, but I mean, look, this is Damian Lillard. What do you think of the criticism where the fans are saying, well, you know, he should have done this in free agency. If he wanted to go to Miami, why did he sign a 2-year extension with Portland? He should have just done it 2 years ago when he was a free agent or became a free agent and left. What do you make of the criticism of Dame here? People call him selfish for doing this to the Blazers, putting him in a tough spot.
I don't think he's selfish. I have talked to people around him, and like, I think ultimately they probably should have sat down both sides 2 years ago. It probably would have been better for both parties to allow that kind of divorce to happen earlier. It probably would have been better for both sides. The downside of that is the extension. Like, it would have had to be like agree to an extension with a new team kind of situation, which complicates things certainly. But Damian Lillard is good enough to be like, yeah, you'll give him the extension. You're not going to worry about him James Hardening. Ultimately, again, I think that the organization will work to get him somewhere that's good for him. Whether or not that's Miami, I don't know. They work with CJ McCollum to get him to New Orleans. I'll tell you right now, New Orleans was not his top destination. I know that for a fact. Josh Hart had the Knicks on a list of teams like he'd be willing to like go to an extent, because they weren't going to send him somewhere where he was going to go there and then not look to resign. You go back to the Twitter feed. I was sitting there talking about Josh Hart is going to be a Knick 3 weeks before the trade. Like, it was no kidding. It was just a matter of like, what is Portland getting back? Is it a first in Cam Reddish? Is it a first in Obi Toppin? Like, what is this going to be? And I think they found a trade that made sense for both parties. You know, the Blazers, even if let's say the Blazers stayed older and they walked a more veteran path, they weren't going to pay Josh Hart to be $20 million a year sixth man. When it's all said and done, don't be surprised when Josh Hart gets a 4-year, $80 million deal.
Yeah, I think it's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, for him taking care of them, I think it's coming.
I would be stunned if Josh Hart got anything other than a 4-year, $80 million deal.
I think
because I've heard about it for 2 months. So if it's, 476, fine. Like whatever. We're arguing, haggling over $1 million a year, but Portland wasn't going to pay that to a sixth man when they've got Damian Lillard, they've got Anthony Simons, they've got Jeremy Grant, they've got Yusuf Nurkic. Like, the books just weren't going to line up for that. That's just the way. Jeremy Grant just got a 5-year, $160 million deal. They weren't going to be able to fit that in there. They'd be at the second apron. So they got a first-round pick and a look at Cam Reddish to see if he could be a guy on his third stop. But they got a real first-round pick. With CJ McCollum, they got him to a real spot where he's now happy and he's extended, a good basketball position for him where he was the lead guard. And, they've made some noise with some injuries and stuff like that. But those teams, like, they weren't like, send me to New Orleans, send me to New York. No, they had a list of teams that they were able to work with. That's why I keep saying one of two things is going to happen. It's a mega deal, or Dame puts 2 more teams on the list. And when I was down in Vegas, I was talking to a former front office executive who was actually conducted one of these trades. And what he told me was this, and this was the entire process. The star was a mega star, is a little bit older, but in the same kind of situation where there was a diverging path. And he told me, he goes, look, this is the way I think it needs to go with Dame. That star gave us a list of 3 teams. And we told them, we had this discussion, this back and forth. It was collaborative. And the discussion was, okay, look, if we have an offer on the table from 3 teams and they're all equal, or there's 2 that are equal, the player, you can pick which of these destinations you want to go to. But if there's one offer that is clearly better than the others, we're taking that offer. But you still go to one of the teams you want to go to. In the end, it came down that all the offers were relatively the same. And so he got to choose where he went. He went there, they won, he was happy. The team had draft capital that was worth it to them. They were able to draft a player that was valuable to them. And both teams were amenable. It wasn't like this ugly relationship. I've heard the same situation was true with Kevin Durant. that, yeah, everybody knew he wanted to go to the Suns, but the Nets told him flat out what they're offering right now when Robert Sarver was owning the team was not, they just couldn't do it. What changed between then and February? The team sold, 4 days before the trade deadline that Matt Ishbia took control of the team. The second Matt Ishbia took control of the team, Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and all the picks became available.
Yeah.
The deal got done. It wasn't that, oh, now we're willing to trade you. It was, no, the deal got better. And I think that's the thing is like everyone in Miami keeps trying to tell people it's a good deal while the rest of the world is looking at you going, that deal is terrible. Please feel bad about it. Like there's nothing redemptive about it. And so the deal just needs to get better. However, whether it's the Heat being ingenious with how they move stuff around or another team valuing pieces there that the Trailblazers don't. And that's not the onus right now is not falling on the Blazers to do that because I believe them. They're willing to wait this thing out. And there is a very real possibility that Damian Lillard is on this team to open the season.
And that wouldn't be surprising, right? Because we saw that with Brooklyn where Kyrie and KD wanted out and they were on that team to start the season. I think the same thing could happen to James Harden over in Philly if they don't find a deal for them. I think the same thing can happen there. So at this point, it's status quo until we see anything different or if the trade package gets better for Portland from what you're telling us. But Danny, let's move to the future. Let's move to the current right now because this team is now drafting young talent. We were there, as we all discussed, at Summer League. You have Scoot Henderson, who went number 3 to the Portland Trail Blazers, and you had Shaedon Sharpe, who was there at Summer League too, and he was balling out. I like what I saw from Game 2 from him. Give me your thoughts on Scoot Henderson first, and then we'll go on to Shaedon Sharpe.
Scoot had a really good 22 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
Shaedon had the same situation last year, unfortunately. I made a special trip down the Summer League last year. I wasn't going to go. It was a last-minute thing. And because they were going to trade the pick number 7 to Toronto last year. It sounded like it was going to get very close to OG Anunoby being a Trailblazer. And Masai and the Raptors ended up asking for the sky, the moon, and everything underneath it to get OG Anunoby. And that was kind of I guess we all should have seen that coming. And so that didn't end up happening because the Blazers valued Sharpe over OG. And so I went down there and less than 6 minutes into game 1, he separated his shoulder, didn't need surgery, but he was basically down for 3 months. Scoot Henderson went up for a rebound, and his teammate kind of pushed down on his shoulder and gave him a pretty sore shoulder. No separation that I was told of or dislocation, but he was pretty sore. I'm under the impression that if this was a regular season or a game that mattered, he would have played. But as a Summer League, play it safe, be fine. But in those minutes he was out there, he was spectacular. Was it 15 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, if I'm remembering right? 5 of 12 in the field. Could get to his spots wherever he wanted to. Bill Simmons and Jerry West were sitting in front of me, and they were gushing uncontrollably. The execs around the league that bumped into me in the tunnels, and I was like, hey, so what do you think of Scoot? To a man, every single one of them had some sort of expletive of how good he was, and then they followed it up with, boy, did Charlotte screw that up. It was a lot of that. And look, I'm a Brandon Miller guy. I think he's going to be good. Summer League is tailor-made for Scoot Henderson.
Yeah.
Ball-dominant pick-and-roll guards. There's a reason why Josh Shelby was co-MVP with Damian Lillard in 2011. Like, that's what this is meant for. The Summer League is not meant for Victor Wembanyama. It's not meant for bigs. The last time we had a big at Summer League be great was Anthony Randolph. Like, it just doesn't happen all that often. But Scoot's ability to set guys up, get to his spots, finish with either hand. Like, I'd seen his handle. I'd watched a lot of tape on him leading up. His ability, like, he's got longer arms even than Dame. Dame's got dumb long arms. Scoot is even long. I believe he's over 6'9" wingspan. And don't believe the 6'4" stuff. Scoot is not 6'4". He's 6'2" in shoes. Like,
yeah,
he's not this enormous guard that people think he is. But his handle is obscene. His hezzy, he got probably 4 different guys with it in that game alone. He's got a little hezzy where he gives you that shoulder lift where you think he's going into that pull-up floater at full speed. He'll stop as he frees you and then get by. And it's nasty. Just straight filth. And then he's got a hanging cross that gets so far out from his body. You're like, oh, that's going to get ripped. But his hands are like dinner plates. I shook his hand when he came in for interviews during the draft process. I was like, oh, you've got Kawhi hands. Like, he's shaking my wrist. I was like, oh my good. And you watch him manipulate the ball and you go, oh, so he baits guys into reaching. And it's, if you reach, I teach madness.
Yeah.
So he hits you with the hezzy, that wide cross snatch back, and he just blows by and you go, oh yeah, no, this is going to be fun to watch for 10 years. But the thing I love about Scoot is, he's got it. He's got the juice. Like, you listen to him talk, he's face of a franchise material. And I know what that looks like because Dame is, to me, there's two guys, maybe three guys in the NBA, and Dame, Steph, and Giannis, that are unquestionably the dude. And you can say LeBron, but Dame, Steph, and Giannis don't ever step in it. They don't. Like, they're at every interview. They never get terse. They never go sideways. They're incredibly involved in the community. Their approval rating is above 90%. Like, you don't have Dame haters. You don't have Giannis haters. You don't have Steph haters. I mean, you do, but like, they're anime avatar weirdos. You know what I mean? Like, they're not. That's not who they are. It's like, well, that's not true. Giannis has hater and they're Nets fans because Giannis broke their soul.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, their approval ratings are through the roof because they know how to be professional and be faces of franchises and faces of the league. Scoot's got that gene. Now, will he be one of those guys? That's yet to be seen. But he's got that to begin with. So I think Portland hit a home run in that regard. Like, if you're just looking at the top three guys in Wemby, Scoot, Miller, Scoot is above everybody in that regard in this draft. It doesn't mean Wemby. Wemby to me is more like a Tim Duncan. Like, he's gonna be a face for franchise, but he's gonna lead by example and not as the guy that answers questions every single night.
Yeah, that was a first impression that I had of Scoot Henderson. It was really my first time seeing him in person, and just covering the NBA all season long. I don't get time to watch a lot of college and anything outside of that. So watching him in person, it just stuck out right off the charts. He has that it factor, and you saw the leadership qualities on the court. He's always talking. He's always communicating. The energy, the enthusiasm, the passion for the game just stuck out. And the ball control, the body control. He was impressive, man. I loved everything I saw about him. Just too bad he got hurt. I was looking forward to seeing him and Wemby clash in that second game. But Scoot looks like the goods, no question about it, man.
And he's got the juice. There's no doubt about that. I was bummed because the thing that I've been told by Jason Hart, who is his G League Ignite coach, everybody compares him to Russell Westbrook and Derrick Rose. He's not that kind of athlete. He's bursty, but he's not. And this is not a slight at Scoot. Rose and Westbrook are different. Like, even Ja is not at that level of insane burst.
Explosive.
Now, Ja's got bird bones and he can blow by anybody and get up with anybody.
Yeah.
But young Russell Westbrook and young Derrick Rose, like, Derrick Rose was so explosive he blew out his own knees. Like, that's the level of explosive he was. Scoots, and Jason Hart put this out there, and I thought it was perfect, is more like young Jason Kidd. Like, insane level athlete, but he combined it more with strength and body control. I know probably a lot of guys that are listening to this or watching this are like, they're probably thinking of Dallas Mavericks Jason Kidd. Go back and watch New Jersey Nets Jason Kidd. That dude was a dude. Like, that team, Kerry Kittles, Kmart, Richard Jefferson, they were athletic. Don't get it twisted. Jason Kidd was a run and gun monster who would dunk on anybody. Scoot's got that level of kind of athleticism where he's 200 pounds already. That thing, Scoot's a kid. He's 19. He's got a grown man body. What does he look like when he's 25?
Right.
Because, like, maybe he doesn't balloon out, but I don't think it's out of this world to think about, again, kind of throwback, Darren Williams. Darren Williams was a truck in Utah. And I think that's how Scoot, to me, projects, is being a guy that, yes, he's bouncy, he's bursty, but it's more about combining that with strength and body control. Because you see him in the air, his ability to be off axis and off balance and yet not be off balance, you can just see it. Like you see him get bumped and it doesn't bother him. Like he just adjusts his core, adjusts his legs, his hands, his feet in midair. And it's just this very simple, I don't know, graceful thing that just most guys don't have, particularly at that age coming into the league.
For sure. And, you know, they made sure to utilize all of that in the recent documentary movie Shooting Stars when he was playing center. What was the character's name they just playing out? Romeo Travis. And when he was doing all the dunks, they made sure to make sure he was dunking at every single opportunity. But Danny, what are your quick thoughts on Shaedon Sharpe? What do you think of him so far?
Shaedon's a top 1% athlete in the NBA.
Absolutely.
Period, point blank. The Blazers have, or in the last couple of years, they've had Greg Brown III, who's a 6'8" freak out of Texas, played with Kai Jones at Texas. Greg's one of, 3 players in NBA history who's East Bay funk dunked in a game, like at 6'8", 6'9". And they have Anthony Simons, who's a slam dunk champion, and they have Shaedon. And I've known since he was a little kid here in the league, 18 years old. Always been a freak athlete. He's got a 42, 43-inch vertical. And Shaedon got to camp, and I said, so what's up with him athletically? He goes, I'm not the best dunker on the team anymore. I'm not the best athlete on the team anymore. I was like, oh, really? And Shaedon's ability to get up off 1, get up off 2 on a stance, like he will go into a Euro step, cradle, land on 2, go up and dunk. It's like in an elevator booth. Like it's just, you're not supposed to be able to do that. Like the only other guy in the league who can do that with that much power is Zion. It's just, you're supposed to need a ramp. He can do it from a flat foot standstill. And I know this sounds like hyperbole. He looks down in the rim when he really gets up. I've seen him do it with my own eyes. It's terrifying. If you actually measured his vert, he's probably a 45, 46-inch vert. There's a thing out there where his unofficial was 48 or 49 at Kentucky, which would shatter the combine record. I don't think it's quite that high, but 44, 45, I think he's there. And it's just, he does it in this area that just doesn't make any sense. But he's got a natural knack for cutting, and he was the 4th best catch and shoot 3-point shooter on volume in the league last year. Among guys that took 150 catch and shoot looks last year, he was 4th.
Wow.
That's not supposed to be a thing for a guy who needs time. Now, his handle, they need to lock him in a gym with whoever got Paul George his handles. Because even though Shaedon's 6'5", his game is less shooting guard, more small forward. He's more of a wing in his stylistic play. He's not going to break you down in a triple threat, but he needs to improve his handle to be able to create a pick and roll because he's a damn good cutter. He's a damn good 3-point shooter, and his ability to knock down shots off screens, off movement, or catch on the run and then attack, that's all there. That's all great if he's going to be like the number 3 guy on a team. But if he's going to be a 1 or a 2 guy on a team, the handle and the creation has to increase. But Portland is very high on his ceiling. Mike Schmitz, obviously, from Drive to Express, is an assistant GM for the Trailblazers, or one of the assistant GMs. And he was one of the guys that was closest to Shaedon during his kind of discovery phase. And he was one of the few people that got to see him work out at Kentucky, which, again, if you start drawing lines around this stuff, it starts making sense. When they bring in Schmitz, they draft Shaedon. Before the draft this year, they brought in Pooh Jeter, who was Scoot Henderson's mentor, G League Ignite. Pooh Jetter's also from Portland, played at University of Portland. So he's going to be a development coach and the assistant GM of their new G League team. You start drawing lines, and you can kind of see like what they're trying to do going forward with this young crop of stars.
Yeah. Well, it seems like, with Sharpe, especially coming into the draft last year, he was kind of a mystery, right? Like, what are you going to get? What is he going to do at the NBA level? Well, going into year 2, just off of my overall observations in Summer League, as you said, the athleticism is off the chart. The jumper's looking smooth, but he seems just a little bit more confident in his game, especially just these 3 games that I've seen him in yesterday, last night being his best one. It seems a little bit more sure of himself in terms of what he wants to do out there and going into year 2.
100%. He was nervous last year. had a preseason game up in Seattle, kind of a precursor to the NBA returning there against the Clippers, and that was Kawhi Leonard kind of making his return, Paul George, and he played, I want to say 8 or 9 minutes, and he was awful. Like he was legitimately just terrified, because the thing is, and this isn't to crap on the kid, I love him, but the last time he played competitive basketball was in the EYBL. So he went from EYBL to Kawhi Leonard. That's a scale that you just can't prepare for. And he was 19 years old. You got to remember, this is a kid that was born after 9/11. Okay, like to kind of put that like in your head is like
young. Yeah.
So Portland comes back home and they play Maccabi Haifa, one of the Israeli teams, and there's Norris Cole, Terrence. He played in Portland. I'm totally forgetting his last name. Terrence Jones.
Kentucky.
Played at Kentucky. Played in Houston. He was on the team. A couple other former NBA guys were on the team. And I want to say early in the first quarter, he caught a lob and just caught a body at the rim. And you could see it click right then and there. I think he went for 29 in the game, and it was off dunks, it was off cuts, it was off threes, it was off mid-range pull-ups. He would just get into his spots, just cooking. And I talked to him after the game. I was like, that lob you caught in the first quarter, that triggers something that said, I belong in the NBA. I can play in the league. And he goes, absolutely. He goes, I was a little jittery, game one, but that was the moment I knew I could do this. And really ever since that moment, he's just become a guy. And they had, training camp. It was like, well, how many minutes is Shaedon going to play this season? 10, 12 minutes. Maybe by the end of the season, he was playing, 25 a night. Now, this is actually a tank, but like during the season, he was getting 15 to 17 minutes a night, like real minutes, even when they were trying to win. And that whole process probably benefited them in the Blazers in the long run. But in that, it was a little bit interesting to kind of watch it all go through.
Yeah, interesting indeed, man. Well, it looks like the future is bright for Portland. While you wait on the Dame stuff, things are looking fairly bright, man. So, listen, man, we definitely appreciate the insight you dropped here. It was very insightful. And hopefully once the Dame saga clears and the smoke clears, well, hopefully you come back on, man. We'll break it all down again. But definitely we appreciate your time, man.
Anytime, guys.
Absolutely. Just let the fans know where they can find you. Any upcoming content, just go ahead and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, if you want to find any content, you can search Jacked Ramses across all social media platforms, on YouTube, Twitch, wherever, Facebook. I mean, we're literally everywhere. If you want to listen to Portland Terrestrial Radio, you can go to 1080thefan.com from noon to 3 Pacific Standard Time. And then content-wise, we're always cranking out stuff. We're doing film watches on all the young guys, Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Ryan Rupert, Chris Murray, later in the next couple of weeks. And if you want to get deep into it, I've got a Patreon as well. Just search Jacked Ramses Patreon. It's there as well.
There you go, man. Danny, thanks again for your time, and much appreciated, man. Take care.
Hey, anytime, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Danny Morang, once again, of the Jacked Ramses podcast, man, and also on, as he said, local Portland Terrestrial Radio, 1080 The Fan, the Danny and Dusty show. Salute to everybody in the chat. Once again, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. CP and Alex here on the ones and twos, man. Great conversation on the Dame saga and, some young stars or some young prospects that the Blazers are looking at, man. So, interesting dynamic there for the Portland Trail Blazers. Al, let me bring you back in on the solo as we get to the next topic, man. Zion, as the world turns with Zion Williamson, man. Zion Williamson had joined the Gilbert Arenas podcast in the Blue Wire studio. We had a lot of people pass by us there on Sunday. We had John Wall, Grant Williams, who else? Landry Fields, Josh Childress. He had a couple players pass by us. Gilbert Arenas and these guys, they're talking about Zion. And boom, just like that, serendipity. It's Zion walking past the Blue Wire studio, and they were able to connect. But, it was interesting, man. He had a couple of interesting things to say, and I want to play some of these sound bites here. So to everybody in the chat, once again, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. And let me play some of this from Zion, man. Here it is. This was Zion Well, first thing that Gil asked him was about his weight. And this one, it's not really audible, so I won't play this clip. But he basically mentioned the fact that, it's been a challenge to diet and maintain a healthy playing weight, and that he's been struggling with that as, as he's gotten into the NBA. But here was another soundbite, and just in terms of just getting his weight together.
But
all right, here we go.
When you young, you feel like can't nothing stop you, but then when you look back on your life, you really look at it like, man, the people who gave me wisdom, who like tried to nurture me, tell me, man, like you don't need to do that, you need to do this. They didn't try to force their way into your life. So at this point in my life, I'm just looking back at it like, man, who really gave me wisdom? Who really tried to put me on game to things? And like I said, man, at the end of the day, people gonna get their opinions, and what I can say is I do respect brutal honesty. I'd rather somebody be brutally honest with me than try to sugarcoat it, because at the end of the day, if they honest with me, I know what I need to do to fix it. So, yeah.
All right, that was Zion on his weight and just trying to get back discipline, man. I appreciate his honesty in this quick sit-down interview that he did with them, because there's so much to be made about him and his reputation, and does he want to play this, can he control the weight, this, that, and the third. He kept it brutally honest. He said, it's been difficult. It's been difficult trying to maintain a weight, and I can only imagine for someone like him who has handlers. I'm sure the Pelicans have nutritionists, everybody, sports scientists out the wazoo, trying to make sure that he comes into camp in the best shape. But despite all of that, he still is not able to stay disciplined. And that's a real thing as human beings, right? We struggle with discipline in a lot of areas of our lives, not just diet, not just food. So for him, I feel like it was refreshing for him to say that. Now the challenge, he says he's getting out in front of it, and he wants to listen to the people that were trying to look out for him. Now the challenge is actually doing it and staying the course. Can he do it is going to be the big challenge.
Absolutely, man. And, we had this whole conversation about Zion and would take him on the Knicks and whether or not he wants to play, injury, all of those concerns. The truth will be if he can get it under control. It's nice that someone acknowledges the issue, acknowledges the problem. It now comes to, how do you take care of those problems? How do you address it? And for him, I'm not going to judge how easy or how difficult it is. As you already mentioned, like, it's difficult, man, to be regimented, all these things. And everyone's body is different. Look, he's a naturally big dude. We've seen this from high school, college, now in the NBA. He is a Mack truck, legitimately. That's what makes him so dominant. You can't stop him. Look, you mentioned it on the last show. We saw him strip Kevin Knox in Summer League. Yep. That's how strong he is. But at the same time, with all of that, with all of his, how great he can be, he's got to do it, man. And whether that comes down to sacrifice to a certain degree, right? What you eat, how you treat your body, everyone's different. How strict will you be going into the regular season? Look, we see Julius Randle, right? As Knicks fans, he comes in great shape every single season. This past season, he was the most trim we probably ever seen him in a Knicks uniform, right? I think this is the fastest I've ever seen him run up and down a court. Julius Randle, I'm talking about. Zion, at some point, you got to figure it out, man. You just got to figure it out and put. It's not mind over matter at this point. That's all it is. So it's good that he acknowledges it. Let's see if he can actually do it. I want to see him have a happy and healthy career, man. Yeah. I don't root for anyone to have failures, but at some point you can only be the change. You can only be that course of correction. So let's see if he can do it.
Discipline and maturity, man. I think, I hate to be, psychoanalyzed. I hate to be that guy, but just from what I've gathered from this interview, it's a 9-minute interview, 10-minute interview, just seems like a young person trying to find that discipline and maturity and apply that to the court. Not everybody comes in with the same approach as LeBron, as Kobe, as MJ, as Tim Duncan, you know, those guys that were just so locked in to their craft, locked into the game that nothing can move them off of that. This is a kid who, as we see in this new generation of social media, you're crowned the king before you even step foot on an NBA court, right? You have the overtime platform and this platform and highlights, Zion Duncan. You're the guy. You are the king. The world is your oyster. So I think for a lot of fans, it's hard to see him be vulnerable in this way because we already put him on that pedestal of being infallible, right? He's superhuman. He's a freak of nature, freak athlete. So now he's saying, hey, listen, man, like, I'm having difficulties here. I'm having challenges here. So it's just very interesting because with all these phenoms, with all these prodigies and Wembanyama and LeBron and this guy, you expect them to hit the ground run. LaMelo, you expect them to be that superstar that you prop them up to be right away. And so for Zion now, it's year 4. He's slow out the gate. He's slow at the gate, but it's not on the court. It's preparing for a long season because he has a game that's predicated on power, on explosiveness. You know, all your joints, everything has to be intact. It's all got to be there or these injuries are going to happen. So again, I'm very interested to see how he pushes through this and what type of season he's going to have because as we've seen, when he's on point, boy, oh boy.
Yo, he's unstoppable.
Far few people that could stop.
Look, beginning of this season, Pelicans were number 1 in the West. They were dominant.
Yeah.
We can't forget last season, too. He was an all-star. He was just that dominant. The good thing, man, he's only 23. He's very young.
Yeah.
Right? Unfortunately, the NBA does not at some point that stops. At some point it says, okay, he's only so young. We're going to give him so many chances. You now have to produce. And he's getting to that point where 25 is closely approaching. They're expecting him to produce now, right? You talk about now he's going into his 5th year, right? Same draft as RJ. This will be his 5th year. You got to show some level of maturity. This is a business. So I would like to see him just get it together, man, because with not everyone gets these opportunities, man. It's so limited. And for something that is easier said than done, and I could say it's so simple when it comes down to diet. I know it's not the simplest thing. Like I said, everyone's body is different, but out of all the things that could change, I feel like this aspect of within his regimen, right? Dieting. I feel like that's the most controllable thing you can control.
Yeah.
Injuries, that's tough to control.
Right.
The system you play in, that's not easy to control because you're getting drafted. Diet, a little different. You control where you sit down to go eat, what you're eating, all that stuff. New Orleans, not gonna lie, very difficult place. I was down there,
man.
I was down there. I was down there for 8 days for Mardi Gras, man.
I was eating like a king out there. Like a
very tough.
Yeah. Food is phenomenal out there, man. No question.
Very tough.
Yeah.
So not easy to be in New Orleans and say, hey, man, go on a diet. Next thing you know, you go around the quarterback. Yo, that burger looks good. Yo, Southern breakfast. Let me get some grits.
Yeah.
Let me get some eggs.
Yeah.
Biscuits
and he's from
gravy,
the South. You know, he's from South Carolina. So even before he got to New Orleans, I'm sure he was eating good. So, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure. But look, man, I feel like once again, with the diet being the easiest part of it to change. I just want to see him be able to get that under control and go after it, man.
True indeed, man. And then this was one of the final bits that he said here. And this is once again courtesy of the Gills Arena podcast. So to everybody in the chat, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Here is Zion. Here he is.
They want to just sit on the sideline. I think that's why I just want people to at least to understand, like, I don't want to be on the sideline. Y'all think I want to sit over there hurt? I don't. But like I said, like Coach K taught me, gotta own up to my responsibilities. There are a lot of things I could have done better that I didn't, and I'm in the process of, fixing those wrongs.
Bro, you got
So hey, there's things he could have done better. He's in the process of fixing those wrongs. Now, David Griffin met with the team over at Sirius XM NBA Radio. Shout out my guy Justin Termini and Amin El Hassan. The Pelicans GM David Griffin met with them and put down some of the Zion trade rumors that we heard this offseason. Here he is.
I would say it's as good as it's ever been. Actually, he's coming out here to join the team, to be with Herb and Trey and some of these veterans that are here. Brandon's going to come join the team as well. I would say it's as good as it's been. I think what's unfortunate is he is a name that generates clicks no matter what the link says. No. Zion puts on his socks. People click on that. And so it makes it really easy for people to manufacture rumor around him because they don't have to have any kind of actual credibility behind what they say to generate clicks. Yeah. And we've, as a society, this isn't true of sports. This is true across all platforms. Reality doesn't matter anymore. Generating clicks matters. And so unfortunately for Zion, he's an oddity and somebody that people pay a great deal of attention to and manufacture a lot of stories around. We never had a single conversation that Zion was part of. I think people perceived that we would be willing to move off of Zion because of all the injuries, because there's always so much noise around Zion. And fortunately for us, the noise never actually matches what we're really experiencing.
Now, you said you didn't have any conversations. When teams see that, I assume that they're like, oh, this guy might be available. Did you receive a lot of calls? And what did you say when you received them?
No, we didn't. And I think one of the reasons for that is people understand who he is to our franchise and what he allows us to do. So people don't tend to call you and chase things that they know you're not going to do.
All right, that was Pelicans GM David Griffin, courtesy of my guys at NBA Radio Sirius XM today. That's what he says. He says they weren't entertaining it. They weren't receiving calls. I highly doubt it. Look, look, GMs are going to talk, right? If a guy is having a down year, you're going to try to get him on the cheap. You know, that's just business. Now, were they motivated to trade him? I don't think so. I didn't see it. Like when all the trade rumors came out, I didn't think they were going to be that motivated. I don't think they're ready to hit the reset button on the Zion experiment just yet. This is your number one pick. You're only 4 or 5 years into the experiment. You just signed him into a rookie extension. You saw glimpses of how great he could be, albeit a short sample size. You're going to want to see these investments through at least a little bit longer. You have the investment in Ingram. You brought in McCollum. You have Valanciunas here. You have some young, promising rookies from Herb Jones. You just gave Herb Jones his deal. You got Dyson Daniels. You got Alvarez off the bench. They got a nice little squad. To me, pushing the panic button on Zion it's too early, and so I don't believe him when he says they weren't interested in taking calls and they weren't taking any calls. I think they might have been. Typically, GMs, you will. But I don't think they were motivated to trade him.
I don't think they were motivated. Or if they were getting, for sure, they're getting calls. People are going to inquire when they see those things, see those type of reports. I would just say that they probably got no offer that was intriguing enough to them. Right. Like, I'm sure, they weren't. I'm sure they would entertain something if you gave them there's always an offer. There's always an offer. You can't let's keep it a buck. There's always an offer. But I just love how David Griffin is just clickbait everywhere. Zion put on socks. First of all, I will not click on a link if Zion's putting on socks. But you know what I will click a link on? If you're talking about Zion Mariah Mills, all right? Because that is why his name is getting headlines over the place.
Yes.
Just keep it a buck around here, okay? I love how he just that whole thing, just it didn't happen, man. Didn't happen. We're clickbait everywhere. Yeah. Okay, man. Yeah. Okay. But hey, I agree with you though, CP. You're not going to just blow up the whole experiment just because of these issues here and there. It hasn't been so catastrophic where you're ready to blow the entire thing up. Could you be frustrated? Sure. Did you trade for a guy in CJ McCollum who you now wasted another year of his career? He's going to be hitting a point where he can't produce at a high level, right?
Right.
You're looking to see, can this Zion experiment work? You're not really getting enough court time work between both of them. Both of them are injury prone. So, at some point, David's got to make a decision saying, hey, we can't if both of them are not playing at the same time, you got to cut it short at some point. You got to say enough is enough. We got to figure out a different direction, and you got to choose between BI and Zion. Who do you want to move forward with? Because if both of them are going to miss time, it's just not going to help your team. As we always discuss, your best ability is availability. And if your two top players are not on the court at the same time, and they're going to be missing a crazy amount of games year in and year out, it's not an experiment that's going to work.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. So let's see what happens there as they move over from the offseason into the regular season. Now, speaking of the regular season, Al, during the Summer League while we were there, the league has been testing out a couple of new concepts here. A couple new rule changes that have been approved by the Board of Governors and the Commissioner. Number one, the flopping rule. They are going to be assessing a technical foul for players that flop. New rule. Flops will result in a tech, and the opposing team will get a free throw. What do you think about that, man?
I like it in theory. Let's see it work out.
Yeah, that one's hard. That one's hard, right? Because it's like you have your notorious floppers, right? Your Marcus Smarts, back in the days, Ginobili's. Like, you have your guys that'll just like throw themselves all over the place. That has to stop. Chris Paul, that'll just launch themselves into the third row on any contact.
Wait until we get that as a Western Conference final. Memphis Grizzlies against the Golden State Warriors. First of all, the animosity between those two teams is one thing. Then you're going to have both Chris Paul and Marcus Smart colliding, and both of them are throwing each other, throwing themselves on the floor. That'll be a sight to see.
But then I find it tricky because you have your embellishers, and sometimes a guy might embellish if he's been trying to get the ref's attention, like, hey, Joey Crawford, this guy's been doing this whole time, boom, 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 pay attention to this, do. And then, he might embellish a little thing just to show and make sure that the ref sees it. So now in that regard, is he going to get a tech? If you get smacked in the face, our guy Jalen Brunson does this notoriously. This is our guy. He gets slapped in the face, he'll throw his whole self back a little bit. A little embellishment. He's our guy. I like how he sells it. Is that going to be a tech? Right? You did hit the guy in the face, but in a very physical game, maybe the back judge doesn't see it. Maybe the ref doesn't see it. So you embellish a little bit. It's because they'll typically see it when that happens. Is that going to be a tech? How do they referee the guy backing you down in the post? And the guy drops back on the contact, is that an offensive foul? Or is that a flop? Or is it only an offensive foul if the post player is going to use his off arm or use his elbow? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or is the guy, if you're going to do the pull the chair move, is that a flop? Or is that an offensive foul? I think there's gray areas with that one.
It's going to be difficult to watch that be evaluated, but what makes it even more challenging with that rule call is the second rule call or the rule change that you have. So let's go into that one because for me, this kind of overlaps.
It does indeed. And so for the second one is coaches will be given a second challenge if the first one is successful. Now, my reaction to this is, I think the challenges take way too long. Sometimes you got first off, you got 3 referees out there who first get it wrong. Then you got to go to the TV, and they're all looking at the TV. Then you got a whole team of people in Secaucus looking at the same thing. And sometimes that thing will still take 5 minutes to figure out.
And they'll get it wrong.
And they might even still get it wrong. So I think the replays take way too long, and especially when you're in the heat of a game, there's momentum at stake here. Like, things are going, guys are in a rhythm. And then all of a sudden, you're just taking this wild break. You're giving teams extra timeouts when they don't deserve it. The replays take too long, but it still makes sense to have a second challenge if you get one right. I think you should be rewarded for getting one right, for showing the refs that they're boneheads. Your thoughts?
I don't disagree with that thought. However, you talked about a new rule that was implemented in flopping, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Now this guy flops. Now you challenge.
Yep.
How long are we going to take to determine if it's going to be a flop?
Right. How long? How do you police that now?
And now, say for whatever reason they win. Imagine it happens again. Now we got to do this twice. Good Lord, man. I get it. I get it to a degree. I'm not sure where I feel about the flopping. Like I said, great in theory. I think in practice, it's going to suck.
It's going to be hard.
I think it's going to suck. I do not see this working out well for the NBA, just because if you're someone like, it was like what they did for the offense, right? Because this is now a punishment against the defense. It's like you're going to be Trae Young, bait guys into, getting contact and then getting to the free throw line. It still happens.
Yep.
This ain't going to stop flopping. Flopping's going to happen. How do you know with momentum if a guy flopped or not? How do you know if he got hurt or not? Like, do you remember where we watched Melo legit get fouled and his headband was around his face, close to his neck, and you're like, still no foul? Still no foul. But yet you're going to tell me now we're going to give these guys opportunities to call a flop?
Right.
And God forbid it's the wrong call. Now you're giving this team another opportunity for the same thing. Nah, man. I think the second rule change is fine. I think the first one, horrendous. I don't like it at all.
What do you guys think of the chat, man? Leave us some comments in the chat. So to everybody in the chat, East Blue Drew says they're going to call this on Brunson every game. Watch. John Talento always in here. Salute to Talento. Above the rim in here. Gregory Weiner, man. Gregory never misses a show, man. KFTV or NBA Report. Salute to Gregory Weiner. KG7 Full never misses a show. Shout out to John Talento. TMJJ. We got JJ in here. Yeah,
we got baseball ending in 2.5 hours. Now we're going to get basketball going for 3 to 4 hours, man.
Yeah. So just very, very interesting, man. But I like it. Like I said, with the second challenge, I like that. I like that. Yeah. Okay, next topic. It's good to be back, man. It's good to be back on the home soil. It took me a couple of days to recover from Vegas, and I was in Jamaica before that, man. I did a straight trip. Yeah.
God bless.
I went from vacation to the grind, man. I need another vacation now. That's how it works.
CP went from vacation. He then took the crazy long flight from Jamaica to Vegas.
Crazy. I didn't even know you could do such things.
And then because I was supposed to fly back Sunday night, but my flight got pushed to
They
Monday.
screwed you, man.
You ended up flying Sunday night.
Yeah.
But your flight was delayed.
Bro, the flight was delayed. They almost canceled my flight. They got delayed 3 hours. Then when we get there, they tell us there's no flight attendants for the flight. So it was in jeopardy. I mean, this is midnight now. I'm running on fumes, all right? Because we had went from doing the show to Summer League to now the airport. Dinner in the airport.
And you interviewed Wemby. Don't forget that.
Yes, I did go to the Wemby press conference. I was there to press her. Now they're telling me my flight's in jeopardy of getting canceled because they don't have flight attendants for the flight. Bro, literally. So I sat down in a chair. I was beside myself. I was, ready to commit horrible acts if I didn't get home. So I'm sitting down away from all the melee by the ticket desk or the gate. From what I hear, the pilots are leaving, stepping out of the plane, coming back through the jet bridge to leave. It was that close to being canceled, and all of a sudden, like 3 flight attendants were walking towards the plane. So all of a sudden, I hear a loud eruption and a loud round of applause because now the flight attendants are here and the pilots turned back to go back into the plane. So we had a flight. So we ended up leaving at like 12:45 in the morning.
Sheesh.
Everybody's clapping except me. I'm just like, yo, get me home. I'm not even here. I'm not even here for the theatrics. I don't care about any of this. Just get me home. And so I ended up getting home that way, man.
Not the Jamaican ovation that they wanted out of you.
No.
Like when you remember when you land, everyone's clapping that you land.
Yo, how do you feel? Well, When we landed in Jamaica and people started clapping, I told Nick Chick, I said, you hear all the people clapping? They're definitely Jamaican. You know the vibes, bro. You know the vibes already.
Oh, for sure, bro.
Yeah.
For sure.
East Blue Juice says CP Passage 57. You damn right. I was about to pull a John Cutter situation immediately, man. Because my blood pressure was just boiling up. I couldn't take it. Couldn't take it, man. Anyway, Kyrie Irving, ladies and gentlemen, signs a new sneaker deal. Yep, Nike showed him the boot. And there was questions about where he was going to go. And so he's found a new home, Al. Not with a Reebok, not with Adidas, not with Puma. Kyrie Irving signs a new shoe deal with China's Anta. Yeah, Anta. He signs with Anta. His new shoe deal, let's see how much, let's see. The deal comes 7 months after Nike canceled his estimated $11 million annual deal after he promoted an anti-Semitic documentary. It says that the new deal, he will be tasked with recruiting more basketball players, independent brands, influential figures in pop culture, artists, musicians, pioneers in environmentalism, trailblazers in humanitarianism, and designers to collaborate with him to create additional product lines under Kyrie's signature line. So he's now the chief creative officer of his shoe line, I guess, with Anta. All right? So, what are your thoughts?
Okay. There's only very few players I know have signed with Anta.
Yeah. Klay Thompson.
Yep. My doppelganger.
Yep.
Gordon Hayward.
Yep.
I believe Rondo also signed.
Rondo. Okay.
And I know now it's just Kyrie Irving. Those are the only guys that I know of.
Yeah.
Hey, man, good for him. Good for him that he signed with Anta. But I've never seen a sneaker shoe opening of Anta here. I know that because there was a part of me when I was truly hooping. And I was in my law school basketball league. I wanted to get some Klay Thompsons, man. Everyone was calling me Klay Thompson. I was like, let me go get some Klay Thompson sneakers. Then I had to order through Amazon, and it was like, your shoes will be there in 2 weeks. I'm like, 2 weeks?
Wow.
Can't wait for 2 weeks. It was coming straight from China. So I don't know, man. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but
yeah,
I've never tested the shoe. I don't know the comfort, but to me, it's a massive drop to go from Nike to Anta. And then it's like, it's just quite the pivot to say, be an independent, I guess, sponsor of a brand like this. That I feel like that's just him trying to remarket himself after like losing that deal with Nike.
Yeah.
Although the last Nike Kyrie shoes that they had were not it. Okay. So, and yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what they're going to look like. Not really. If you're going to ask me, am I going to go buy a pair of Kyrie Antas? No.
Yeah, I'll probably skip it. It's just, he's a very interesting guy, man, to say the least. He's a very interesting guy because, obviously there's a lot of like political backlash with China and I'm not well versed in any of it, so I stay out of it. But obviously, we know that. And the NBA has been taken to task on it. There's a lot of critics on it based on China's human rights violations. How's the NBA doing business there? This, that, and the third. And then you have Kyrie who, he's outspoken on all these things, on human rights and freedom of choice. And I'm not doing the vaccine. I'm not taking the jab. I'm not doing this. And now he's doing deals in China. Like, I just don't get it. Hey, good luck. Get your money. But it just doesn't make much sense to me, man. It just doesn't make much sense. I mean, back in 2019, there was a meeting between, I believe, some NBA players and the NBA in terms of how they are to proceed in China based on the protests. And Kyrie was quoted as saying, what did he say? I'm just trying to pull up the quotes here. He specifically, according to ESPN, Dave McMenamin, Irving specifically addressed what transpired in a closed-door meeting between players and NBA Commissioner on Adam Silver on October 9th in Shanghai, saying he intended to keep private what he said in the meeting. He says, I don't know whose notes or who's in there. That can't really depend on to keep a conversation like that in-house. I stand for 4 things, man. Inner peace, freedom, equality, and world peace. So if that is being conflicted inside of me, I'm definitely going to have something to say, and I left it in that room. So I don't know. TM says we all use Chinese products at the end of the day. He's absolutely right.
For sure.
So
and I guess it might be to my comment saying I would never wear Antas. I'm saying I'm never going to order them because I'm not going to wait 2 weeks to go get my sneakers.
It's complicated, man. It's complicated. And I guess that's what Kyrie's saying to the world. It's complicated, man.
The hypocrisy, CP.
Hey, this is the world we live in, man. You know, as we lace up our Nikes proudly on a daily basis, wherever those are made. We know they ain't made here in the US of A. So it's
Nikes,
complimentary.
Adidas, Under Armour.
Listen, capitalism knows no morals, man. So hey, God bless him with his Antas. Whoever you recruit, you know, hey, do what you do, man. Do what you do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Salute. So to everybody in the chat, once again, man, hit that thumbs up button for you boys. I thought we had a great show today, man. Great show. You know, it was hard to get back. It was kind of like that first day of school type of vibe. You know what I mean?
I feel you. Yeah, I feel you. Look, man, I'm still recovering. My nose is still a little runny because.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know, man. I don't want to know. Whatever you're into. No testimonials.
Bro, hey, now you take it to a whole other level.
Hey. I'm good.
Bro, it is just the weather in Vegas. Relax over it. Relax.
Hey.
As our guy Mitchell Robinson said to Bourbon, relax.
Listen.
Relax.
Whatever you're into in your extracurriculars, that's on you. I'm not judging you here, pal. I'm not judging you, man. We're gonna kick
it. Ain't that Mr. Vegas?
Yo, you threw me the alley, man. What you want me to do? Just watch it? Come on, man. I got to do a 360 on that one, then. We got people in the chat watching. They want to be entertained, man.
Are they not entertained?
Anyway, we're gonna take a break here on the NBA report, and then we'll head over to KFTV for Knicks Summer League post game. You know, we have no lives, so we'll recap Knicks versus Magic and give the people our thoughts.
Halftime right now,
41-41. So great show, and we'll see you guys over on Knicks Fan TV post game Knicks versus Magic Summer League action. So to everybody in the chat, head over to KFTV. TM, just throw the link in the chat. But great show, man. I thought Danny dropped a lot of gems on the Dame situation, gave us a lot of color on it that we may have been missing. You know, a lot of noise on the Twitter sphere and social media sphere. So I thought it was a great show on Danny. But either way, leave us some comments in the comment section, and I'll see you in a little bit, man. Peace.